Hey creeps, it's Horror Free For All. Continuing my passion project I affectionately call Hall of Creeps, a series where I look at full length feature films that remind me of segments that you could find in my favorite horror anthology franchise of all time, Creepshow. Now, for this specific video, for this playlist, this movie actually feels like two separate franchises in one. One being Creepshow and the other being Twilight Zone. This film actually feels like a spiritual remake of a very famous Twilight Zone movie segment slash classic black and white episode slash remade episode in modern incarnations of the show, which you might recognize as Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. This film came out in 2021 and was written by Max Landis and Roseanne Liang and was also directed by Roseanne Liang. And it's called Shadow in the Cloud. Now, Shadow in the Cloud came out in the 1st of January 2021. It was released straight to Redbox during the COVID pandemic. And I remember seeing a lot of people on YouTube and other platforms covering the film, and there was a lot of mixed reactions to it. Some reactions came from behind the scenes things going on with the writer specifically, one of which is named Max Landis, like I already brought up. Now, Max Landis does share the name of a person who worked on the 80s Twilight Zone movie, John Landis. And if you haven't put two and two together, Max is actually John Landis' son. And if you don't know the backstory about the controversy of the 80s Twilight Zone movie, to put it very brief, Max Landis' father, John, was in charge of directing the first segment that starred Vic Morrow, and there was a tragic accident that cost the lives of Vic Morrow and two other young actresses due to a helicopter crash. And that put the movie in media headlines back in the day and put it in the string of controversy all the way up until the company that was funding the project and releasing it finally released the film due to, I guess, not wanting to lose the money they put in and also to capitalize on the word of mouth that had already been going on for the film. These days, you will be hard pressed to find Twilight Zone the movie on Blu-ray because of that. It's long since out of print and it costs a lot of money. And personally, it's been a film that I've always said if I find it for cheap, I'd buy it, but I'm not going to go out of my way to buy it because of the controversy. And it's kind of like one of those things like the Jeepers Creepers 1 and 2 films for me, where I might be a fan of them or maybe fan of certain things, but I just don't feel compelled to go out of my way to get them for my collection, you know? Well, going back to Max Landis, I remember the controversy being centered around him possibly SAing somebody or multiple people, and there were some allegations being thrown around, and I don't know the results of them, but I do know that people still don't think highly of this guy. And ironically, besides that point, if it wasn't people coming after this film for Max Landis' involvement, there was a lot of critics calling this film quote unquote woke, or I guess anti-misogynistic, and that uber feminism girl power kind of way. And after watching the movie, y'all, I would dare say that this film is not woke at all, but it is a girl power, strong feminism, anti-misogyny film. And if that's something that rubs you the wrong way, if that's something that you are just not into inherently, you do not need to go watch this movie. The only people I can honestly recommend this film to is if you're Twilight Zone fans, if you're World War II set horror film fans, or maybe if you just want something different that you're just not accustomed to seeing on a regular basis, and you want to try something that's short, less than an hour and a half, that kind of flies by in some ways, then I would recommend this film to you. Or if you're a fan of Creepshow, which you're probably here for anyway. So Shadow in the Cloud for me, this was a film that when I got done watching it, I was like, well, that was an interesting movie. There's a lot of unbelievable shit that happens in this film. There's a lot of ridiculous stunt sequences. And there's a lot of dull moments of just basically nothing happening. So it made me wonder, Was this film a patchwork job? Was there behind the scenes edits to the original script? From what I heard, Max Landis was bragging that this film was actually his most faithful to his script out of all the movies he ever got made. And if you don't know his film repertoire, he made movies such as Chronicle, which should tell you that, he had at least some sort of cult following at the time, or at least before this film got released. But I see people disproving that all the time online, saying that it's complete bullshit. I guess these people actually read the original script. I don't know. But all I can tell you is the end product here is very interesting, and I feel like we should go ahead and talk about it. So the film starts off with some really cool synth 80s style techno music that feels at home with some score renditions that John Harrison made for shows like Tales from the Dark Side back in the 1980s, or better yet, Creepshow. There's actually some noises in the soundtrack early on in the film that reminded me of stuff that I would hear in the original Creepshow movie and in Creepshow 2, and it tickled my heartstrings to death. But we, aside from that, get to meet our main character of the film, whose name is Maude Garrett. Maude is appearing to have an injured arm, and she's putting a pistol inside of this makeshift arm sling that she's fashioned out of cloth. And she has this package with her that she's carrying over to this World War II bomber plane, I think somewhere in nearby Australia, and it might be New Zealand. I forget exactly whereabouts, but it's somewhere in Oceania in the 1940s during World War II. And it's a dark night. She boards the plane with her package, and of course, she meets a barrage of male characters that are questioning why the fuck she got on the plane. And she reveals herself to be a member of the WAAF, which is known as the Women's Auxiliary Air Force. And this perhaps is a team linked to the UK and Allied forces. And she reveals herself to be an officer to the gentlemen, and that she's going to be boarding the plane to Samoa with them. And she's carrying this package that is top secret and classified, and the men are not allowed to go inside of the package and look to see what's in it. Their only job is to protect it, and she will go sit down in the gunner turret below the plane to avoid, the lack of room everywhere else above. So when Maude enters the gunner turret, literally for the next 30 minutes, it's just essentially a one character story, to put it lightly. So Maude is down there and she is very uncomfortable. There's a lack of room, obviously, because of how crammed it is down there. The air could be kind of cold because once they're up in the air, there is a bullet hole that leads some cold air from below up through, making it very chilly. And she wants to, I guess, communicate with the gentleman above, and she puts on her headgear and presses the communication button to be able to communicate with them. But off the bat, she overhears them talking about her and how hot she is and how bad they want to fuck her and all this shit. And you can clearly tell that these men are very sexist, very misogynistic, and they look down on Maude for even being associated with the Air Force. And through interactions with her talking with these gentlemen, trying to defend herself, it's pretty evident that these guys don't give a flying fuck if she is of a Air Force unit or an actual officer. They look down on women make believing being soldiers because they don't actually go into combat. And Maude comes up, with her own banter with them and says, well, I think I've been in more combat situations than you guys. As we find out later, near the end portion of this solo part of the movie, where we literally just see Maude going through what she's going through and just hear the voices of the gentlemen above. That might not be the actual case, though. But anyways, we get introduced to this cast of characters that are above, that we pretty much only interact with them early on with their voices over the comm. There's a private on board. There is a Scottish guy who's there. There's a co-pilot from New Zealand, a main pilot. And then there's this guy named Sergeant Quaid, who's the only gentleman on the craft that seems to want to respect Maud and tells the guys to lay off of her. And that may or may not play a role later on, like I said, with this dual reveal that the movie throws at you before the second act of the movie. But, anyways, while Maud is down there, there happens to be some malfunctions in the pit that she's in, and the door becomes jammed, and the gentleman can't get her out in conventional ways. So she's essentially stuck down there. But she notices that something might be following the plane. And at first, she thinks that she's seeing something, but it's later revealed to be a gremlin. Now, I haven't brought this point up because I said in the beginning we get to meet Maud after this synthwave music, right? Well, actually, there's an animated clip in the very beginning of the movie, kind of like a cold open, or I guess beginning credit thing, like classic movies from the 1940s would do before a movie would play. And it's a cartoon about a lazy aircraft or Air Force personnel person being told that they need to be prepared for the gremlins, because the gremlins are supernatural creatures that can stow away on planes and cause bad luck or malfunctions and cause the planes to go down during war. Well, going back to what Maud is going through, she obviously sees what's going on, but given that she's a woman and given that these men above her don't take her seriously and probably want to believe her any fucking way, no matter how she would put the truth, she decides to keep it to herself and act like nothing is happening, which leads to an event where the gremlin decides to come and try to get to her and attack her in the pit, and she has to pull out her gun and her arm sling to essentially protect herself and fire at the gremlin, who is depicted in like a semi-practical, mostly CGI kind of way, trying to pierce through the metal of the cockpit, breaking open the latch and almost allowing Maud to fall out to her death, like 20,000 feet below or however high they are. And Maud figures out how to fend the creature off, but in firing her gun, she catches the attention of the gentleman above, and they're asking for the truth from her, and she kind of tests the water with it, and it doesn't work. But over time, she's like, look, something else we need to be paying attention to. There is an enemy fighter plane that we're going to need to shoot down because they're not too far from us, and if they see us, they can easily shoot us down. So we see a scene where we get to see Maud's skills at firing a turret, and the guys are gobsmacked when she actually succeeds and shoots down the enemy plane. And as she's getting her congratulations, she's trying to make sure that the package upstairs is safe. And the gentlemen start to hear that something is trying to come in the plane, which makes her more antsy. So she's desperately trying to get the gentleman to make sure that the package is okay. And they start, of course, barraging her with questions like, why do you care so much about this package? And she's like, well, it's a confidential thing. You wouldn't understand. But in some point of the conversation, she has like this British accent, and she switches it off and switches to an American accent. And then she drops a bombshell, essentially revealing that this persona of being in the Women's Auxiliary Air Force and her having this combat experience is kind of a white lie. She's not telling the full truth. The name that she used isn't quite her actual name, but her last name is her name by marriage. And over the course of this conversation with the guys freaking out that this woman is lying and possibly a spy or doing espionage without their knowing, she essentially reveals that she's on the plane to escape her husband, who's abusive. And this is the only way she can see to get out of the situation. And of course, the guys are like, well, because you have been lying to us, we're going to look into the package. And when they open it up, they see a fucking baby inside, which catches the attention of Sergeant Quaid, who's revealed to be the baby's dad. And it's implied that Sergeant Quaid and this Maud Garrett woman had an extramarital affair, got pregnant, she had the baby, and she's come to this plane so she can escape with Sergeant Quaid over to Samoa, and from there they can start a new life together, and she can get far away from her abusive husband, that it would essentially kill both of them for finding out that she got pregnant by another man. Essentially, there's planes, like a trio of planes that spot the Allied bomber, and they start attacking the plane. But meanwhile, while that's going on, Maud notices that the gremlin outside has been slowly but surely, over this course of her just being isolated by herself, taking out a few of the plane's engines, and has opened up a latch to a cargo bay in preparation for something. And it turns out, after these planes start attacking, she notices that the gremlin is after the package with the baby. And there's this whole scene where she hears that her baby's daddy got injured, possibly hurt by the gremlin or the fire from above, and the package has been stolen. And when she sees that the gremlin has come down the hatch and has essentially sat the package with the baby inside near the wing of the plane, her motherly instincts kick in, and this is where the movie gets really fucking ridiculous, y'all. So the character Maud Garrett, she opens up the hatch, and she is supposed to be upside down when she's doing this, but she's crawling across the underbelly of the wing to get over to the hatch where the package is, and she's hanging upside down while the plane is flying. I don't even know how high in the fucking air. The wind, the air pressure must be god awful, but it looks like she's just in a goddamn breeze. She grabs the package, wraps it around her body, and then crawls back over to a different part of the plane, pulls herself up with just her arm strength and her legs, looks inside, sees that her baby is okay, and then she goes back down to go back into the cockpit area where she can close the latch door. But something happens, and I guess the gremlin gets involved or whatnot, and it puts a monkey wrench in the plan, and she has to go to a different direction of the plane where there's a hangar port open where I guess the bomber can drop things from, an aerial assault, and she throws the package in there. But when she's trying to climb up in that section of the plane, she falls, loses her grip, and then she is hanging on by this thread where she cut her hand earlier, and she had to tie some cloth to stop the bleeding. And she legit falls from the plane, and you would think, okay, this girl's dead. Where are they going to go from here? No, there's a plane below them that explodes and shoots her back up in the air like a fucking torpedo into the bomber. And now she's with all the gentlemen who are still around up above. And one by one, they each die from various different ways. There's a guy that gets shot down by an enemy plane. There's another guy that's essentially killed by the gremlin. There's a guy thrown out of the plane by the gremlin. A pilot is shot with fire, and he dies in the cockpit, leaving just the co-pilot, I think the private guy, and it turns out Sergeant Quaid, who's the baby's dad, has recovered somewhat from his injuries from before and has come into the fold. And these final four survivors are going to have to figure out how to land this plane because the engines are screwed. It's taken a lot of fire. They managed to get the enemy planes out of the air, but they still have this gremlin coming after them. And there's a scene where Maud essentially shoots the gremlin in the heart, and the gremlin falls out of the plane onto a nearby island below. So you would think that the gremlin is out of the picture, and all they have to do is land the plane on this island, make sure that the baby's okay, make sure that all the people on board are also okay, and then they just wait out there for help to come. And that's exactly what they try to do. They land the plane on this island, and from there, we find out that maybe the gremlin is still around and has taken the package one last time, which triggers something in Maud, I guess her motherly instincts, to hunt down the gremlin and save her baby, which may or may not succeed. And once the dust settles and once the creature seems to be defeated once and for all, we get caught up to speed on the remaining men, onlooking Maud in awe and thinking, I guess, in a metaphorical sense, on how wrong they were to judge her the way they were, essentially. So that, in a nutshell, is what you would expect out of Shadow in the Cloud. Now, for me, just telling you what this movie's about, obviously, going back to the whole, this is a uber girl power, uber feminism movie. It really is. And you don't really see movies like this being made anymore because of the critical and fan backlash over the past few years of Hollywood constantly pumping films out like this with female characters with no real weakness being the front runners of a film and making all the male characters either super misogynistic, super sexist, or just unlikable assholes, and it makes it not worth watching or almost unwatchable because of how irritating and how poorly written these male characters are. And this movie, admittedly, at times does have those ailments, if I'm being honest. But what does work here, and I want to start off with my positives about this, is the fact that this is a very short and sweet movie. It's like less than an hour and a half. And for what it's worth, the soundtrack is killer. The World War II decor and setup, and for this film being essentially a bottle story set entirely inside of a plane for the most part, it feels super claustrophobic. The lighting looks really good. It looks period accurate. What they were able to do with a story in a plane, I guess, given that this is a smaller studio budget, given that this was, I guess a passion project of a few, small time filmmakers, they really did pull off something visually stunning here. Even though there's a lot of CGI involving the monster, the kills, the aerial maneuvers, the plane explosions, the action sequences, even. Despite that, that stuff was really accompanied with a really cool original soundtrack going on for the movie. This 80s synthwave score really does bring this movie into that creepshow territory for me. Roseanne Liang's shots of characters every once in a while, like when we first meet the male characters and we get like some vignettes similar to something you would see in like WWE almost of these guys, and showcasing their personalities without really having to interact with them all that much, was really cool. I really dug that, and I was thinking that Roseanne Liang does have an eye for cinematography, and I would like to see her maybe try something else outside of this subject matter for a movie. And when it comes to the horror and what they're able to do there, this is definitely apexing on the same style and thought behind Nightmare at 20,000 Feet from Twilight Zone. It's playing on the idea that the person seeing this phenomenon can't tell everybody for a particular reason or another. In the original Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, the male character who sees the gremlin on the side of the passenger plane messing with the engine doesn't want to tell anybody because, for one, he doesn't want to make everybody panic, and he doesn't want to stand out and look crazy and possibly have something bad happen to him and him getting, detained, and then everybody's screwed if he can't see for himself what's going on and have to solve it himself amidst a crowd of people that could essentially turn on him if shit goes south. This is kind of like that, but more so in the we're going to add shit onto it and try to add more reasons why a character can't go to the people that they're riding in the plane with about this gremlin trying to sabotage the plane. And obviously, you can see that Maud, the main character, can't go to the gentleman above because A, they don't take her seriously, B, she's a woman and they're sexist and misogynistic. So they're just going to treat what she's saying like she's full of shit or she's lying and trying to cover up her own ass for shit that she's doing. And 3, she doesn't believe it herself, but she knows what she needs to do. And she doesn't quite know why the gremlin is coming to attack their specific plane. Well, we as the audience can see that the gremlin is after something very specific. It's after the package. It's after the baby. So it's easy to imply that the mom instincts in Maud is what comes out of the situation. That's how she's able to overcome the gremlin, right? The inner strength, right? We've seen this trope in Nightmare at 20,000 Feet plenty of times, where the character has to eventually get over the hurdle of disbelief, get over the hurdle of fear, and then just click on into fight or flight, literally. And that is Maud here, just with those added layers that the creators wanted to throw on here. And if I wanted to speculate, I would say that maybe Max Landis really appreciated the Nightmare 20,000 Feet segment from his father's movie that he worked on, and maybe that was his favorite one, and that's why he wanted to reimagine it for a film. This is just speculation, but I think there's some credence to that when you really think about it. And when it comes to this being like a Twilight Zone / Creepshow mashup, I think that the creature design here, even though it's heavily CGI'd, is something that you would see in Twilight Zone or Creepshow either way. But the Creepshow element here, I think, comes down to the vibes, and a lot of it has to deal with, like I said earlier, the music, the way the story unfolds itself, where the character goes through an introspection, learns things on her own, and has to overcome some obstacles. And while Creepshow is mainly known for schlock and substance, if there's any substance to be had in this movie, it's simply a story about preconceived notions. It's about prejudice. I wouldn't say it's about sexism and misogyny, but it's a heavy-handed thing that's already in the movie. But the underbelly of that would be that there's people in this world that are underestimated, and given the right circumstances, given certain things that already exist outside of certain normalities, such as becoming a mom, or wanting desperately a new life and being willing to do anything in your power to achieve that. Those things can unlock abilities within a person to be able to click on, I guess, adrenaline or hidden talents, or maybe hidden even powers within themselves to accomplish what needs to be done. And I feel like that's enough to call this Creepshow like. This does have this comic book flair to it, where I can totally see this being an EC Comics story back in the day. It would have been kind of taboo and thought-provoking to see the main heroine being touted as a actual Air Force pilot, because this would have been maybe in the 1950s. But, here or there, it fits, and for what it's worth, I got what I was coming for in regards to that. Now, when it comes to negatives, y'all, this film does have quite a few. And the first thing I should say that is really irritating about this movie is just the sheer beating over the head that all the male characters in this movie, besides Sergeant Quaid, are assholes to women, they're misogynists, and they're sexists. I hate movies that constantly do this throughout the entirety of it. Movies like Birds of Prey with Harley Quinn in it. That's like the biggest example of why I hate that movie. But here, I don't necessarily hate it here because we don't actually have to see these fuckers on screen. But good God Almighty, the first 40 minutes is literally almost a stage play of seeing the actress who plays Maud Garrett, who happens to be Chloe Grace Moretz. And this was a movie designed to be a starring vehicle for her to do more action roles outside of films such as Kick-Ass, where she played Hit Girl, probably her most notable role in her career. We only get to see Chloe on screen for 40 minutes, and we have to listen to these fuckers all the time yapping about how they want to fuck her, how she's a piece of ass, how she's not a real pilot, how she's not a real soldier, just talking down to her, just making her feel uncomfortable. It is awful. Why would you want to sit there and listen to this drabble for 40 minutes? And better yet, you would think that the film would throw you more interesting things while she's in this little gunner turret for 40 minutes. But no, we only have an initial sighting of the gremlin, and then we see a gremlin attack, and then we see her shoot down a plane. That's it. And the inciting incident for her leaving this gunner pit after it's been proven to be broken and it's stuck in place, and it perhaps could possibly even fall off the fucking plane, is her maternal instincts kicking on when she sees the gremlin bringing out the package that contains her fucking baby. Now, the whole intrigue about what's in the package, what's in the box, look, films like Seven completely ruined the intrigue of a inanimate object being, I guess, a Chekhov's gun in a mystery plot. Here, I think that at first the package was intriguing because you're like, okay, what's in the fucking package? Obviously, the gremlin is here for this. Is this monster bait? Is it the gremlin's baby? Is she like some scientist doing research undercover? Who knows? The sky's the limit. It turns out that all this shit that we're being told within the first 30 minutes is a complete fabrication from this woman. It's her fucking baby, and a guy on board is the baby's dad. And the motive why she's on the plane, it's sound and it makes enough sense. But then again, we just have to add another male character that we never really get to meet on screen, mind you, but it's just another male character to essentially call a piece of shit. And that's just really lame to me. Moving from that, the action surprisingly is really fun. This is a dumb fun movie. I would like to say that this is like a Fast and Furious sequel take on a Twilight Zone / Creepshow story idea. Yes, there's some ridiculous moments where, we see Chloe Grace Moretz supposedly hanging upside down on the wings of a plane, just hanging on with her bare wrist strength, climbing up like a fucking monkey into the cargo area, being blown back into the bomber after she fell out of it from a plane below exploding. Physics do not fucking matter in this movie. And while it's really dumb, can I say that it's fun? But it's still dumb. But then we get to the final act, and while the final act is serviceable, I feel like the movie just ends before, I don't know, we get a little more action out of it. I don't know if this was supposed to be like the gremlin pseudo causes the plane to crash, and then now we just have to have Maude fight the gremlin, defeat it in a fist fight, and then end the movie there. I couldn't tell you if this was the original idea, if this was a reshoot idea, but the end of the movie in the most lackluster way possible. I get the message, I get that it's an okay point to end at, but I was hoping for way more when they got onto the island. I was hoping for more World War II battle scenarios. Maybe the enemy forces are using the gremlin as like a weapon to come attack the bomber or something like that. I was waiting for a Deus Ex Machina just to pop up out of anywhere. But no, it just ends at a point where I didn't want it to end, sadly. So it brings me to my final thoughts on the movie. Honestly, I really don't know where I land with this film. I think it's a mixed bag, but it has some good elements to it. But there's also a lot of irritating shit and lackluster elements kind of working in there as well. In Hall of Creeps, I have talked in the past about a movie that I thought wasn't good at all called The Sand. Here, this is an evident step up from The Sand, but not by much. I forget exactly what I rated that movie, but I don't think I gave it too high of a rating. Here, I'd probably be nicer on it than I normally would for something like this, if only because I do think that in some aspect thereof, there was a love letter to Rod Serling's story, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, in here, and I do like the fact that they were able to work with what they had and make something at least serviceable here. Just where it counted, the writing, the male characters, the action, and I guess the believability of the action, mixed with some lackluster CGI at times as well, which really isn't a negative for this film because the CGI mostly looks fine. But yeah, you can kind of throw that in there if you really wanted to beat the film over the head even further. It just leaves me kind of in the middle, but I'm like dead middle with the film. Maybe slightly higher than that. I'd probably give this movie, though, realistically, a 3 out of 5 stars. And that's with an asterisk, though. Like, if it wasn't so atmospheric and if it wasn't so, I guess, well shot, I could easily be harsher on it. And maybe when I rewatch this movie in the future, it might go down. I don't see it necessarily going up for me. So that's why I'm giving it a 3 out of 5 with an asterisk, just in case that might change in the future. But it's still a light decent, mostly just okay movie. I've seen way worse. It could have actually been way worse if it went full on quote unquote woke with more politics in the mix. This would have been an absolute fucking mess of a film. But as is, for a girl power, super feministic movie, putting a female character as the heroine of a World War II war adventure with, I guess, some Twilight Zone / Creepshow horror in the mix, it was serviceable enough, and I guess it gets a light recommend for me. I feel like this is a movie that everybody should at least try once. If you hate it, I totally get it. If you really love it, I don't necessarily see where you're coming from, but I kind of get it if this is something that you're actively looking for. If you're like me, who just likes good entertainment, or maybe you're just like anthology horror, I think this will itch a scratch for you if you're looking for some World War II content, but don't get your hopes up too high and don't set your expectations too high. Lower them down from up here to about here and go into it that way, and you'll probably come out okay. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on 2021's Shadow in the Cloud. Let me know down in the comment section if you've seen this movie before. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What's your thoughts on it? And if you have any films that you think would be really good for me to cover in this Hall of Creeps playlist, let me know down in the comment section as well. Until next time, take care.